Alice, in this segment, we're going to be talking about one of the most valuable and, frankly, misunderstood benefits that VA offers, special monthly compensation, or SMC. Very briefly, SMC benefits are a benefit that's available to veterans to provide additional compensation above and beyond what the veteran's combined rating allows for. SMC benefits are not assigned like regular VA benefits. There's not a percentage assigned, as is service-connected disability compensation for another type of condition. SMC benefits are based on really severe and exceptional circumstances. Very specific levels are assigned for different types of functional loss. And so SMC can often become more relevant as a veteran ages or their disability progresses, just by the very nature of the fact that that typically is when a veteran's condition worsens and therefore allows for the higher level of compensation that SMC is intended to compensate for.
Right. Yeah. And the legal authority governing SMC is 38 U.S.C. Section 1114 and 38 CFR 3.350 through 3.352. And in reading these, you'll see that SMC rates are designated by letter. For example, L through O, R1, R2 for aid and attendance at the highest levels. But I want to make a point to note that not every letter in the alphabet has an SMC rate. There's not A through Z. And just because there's a rate assigned for L, it doesn't mean that that would be less than another rate. For example, it's not like corresponding. So like you see S and you might think, oh, that's a really high rate. That's actually lower than L, which comes first in the alphabet. So just want to be clear about that.
Yep.
VA is supposed to consider SMC when it's raised by the evidence pursuant to Akels v. Derwinski.
Do they always do that?
No, they don't. So a lot of times it's on us or a veteran to get VA to look at that. And you can claim it explicitly, but we always try to raise it first. And there are several levels of SMC that include loss or loss of use. And this happens when there is actual loss of a limb, for example, or loss of use, which is a severe disability. It's paralysis or weakness that basically renders that limb no longer functional for practical purposes. It's very severe. And the most common SMC terms we see, and you'll hear us talk about today, are aid and attendance and housebound. You may have heard these before and not even realize that these were SMC rates. Yeah,
these are very, very popular. And as SMC goes, maybe more common.
Yeah.
That we see in our practice here. So I know we're going to go over that and get into that a little bit more later on. But I think first, let's talk about the types of disabilities, and there are numerous, that most often lead to SMC. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is, I think, a good general list. The first, as you mentioned before, physical loss or loss of use, right? So here we're talking about the loss of limbs, the loss of an arm or loss of multiple arms, or loss of parts of an arm or leg. We see amputations from the knee down or from above the knee or from, a hand or finger. Loss of use, on the other hand, again, as you indicated before, the veteran hasn't physically lost an appendage, but they have lost the use of that limb, right? And so VA often will treat that the same for purposes of awarding SMC. The other is vision loss. And so we see I see this at least a little less frequently, but nevertheless, it does happen. Veterans have severe visual impairments and blindness, sometimes visual acuity of 50 or 200 or less in both eyes. And so SMC is awarded in circumstances where a veteran's vision loss is just that. It's a loss. And so under the law, under the regulations dealing with SMC, VA has a system in place to compensate accordingly for those.
And a couple more examples, more severe or very severe, I would say, is traumatic brain injury residuals. Traumatic brain injuries are really intense. They can cause a number of different residuals. So there is also you could qualify for SMC at some of the lower levels, but there's also a higher level of SMC at the T level that is specifically for traumatic brain injuries. And another one is being bedridden. This is governed by 38 CFR section 3.352A. And direct quote for you, Mike, this is a condition which, through its essential character, actually requires that the claimant remain in bed. And I'll note that voluntary or prescribed bed rest doesn't suffice for this type of benefit.
Yeah, this is, again, SMC, think of the most severe, exceptional circumstances for veterans, unfortunately dealing with loss of functional use. So all those things that you just said. Continuing on, another category of conditions are neurological conditions. And so think of diseases such as ALS, MS, Parkinson's disease. If you've ever known someone that unfortunately has this or any of these, very disabling. And so SMC is awarded oftentimes based on those conditions for the functional loss that those conditions impact the veteran on a day-to-day basis. One thing to note, mental health conditions often kind of get wrapped up sometimes with neurological conditions, although separate. SMC isn't often awarded solely due to a mental health condition such as PTSD, at least from what I've seen. What typically happens, though, is a mental health condition will impact a veteran's ability to perform everyday living activities, right, or ADLs. As VA calls them. And so when that happens, a veteran's mental health disability can lead to the award of SMC by virtue of the fact that their PTSD or severe depression or other mental health conditions prevent them from being able to care for themselves and need a third-party caregiver. So just something to note, we see that frequently.
Right. And so Mike mentioned a minute ago activities of daily living. So I want to talk a little bit about aid in attendance and housebound status. So first off, aid in attendance, or ANA. This is available when a veteran needs help with their activities of daily living due to their service-connected conditions. This could include bathing, dressing, feeding, toileting, or adjusting prosthetics. There are also This is usually compensated under SMC-L, but there are higher rates of SMC that you may qualify for if you have the need for aid in attendance plus some other things going on. Now, housebound status, there's two ways to qualify. First, most straightforward is being housebound, right? That's where we get the name. But also, you can qualify for housebound status if you have a disability that's rated at 100%, and then your other service-connected disabilities combined to 60% or more. This would also work if you have a award of TDIU, or total disability based on individual unemployability, and that's based on one service-connected condition. But then again, you have other conditions that combine to 60% or more.
So Dallas, like an example of that might be if a veteran has an award of TDIU, and as you said, that TDIU is based on, say, exclusively service-connected PTSD.
Very common. We make that argument, and you might see other conditions that combine to 60, which could be maybe sleep apnea at 50 for a CPAP machine, and then tinnitus at 10. And that could be enough in cases like that.
That right there is your path, perhaps, to SMC at the level S.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to file for SMC, including for these two types we discussed, you want to include in your filing VA Form 21-2680. This is the examination for housebound status or permanent need for regular aid and attendance. And if you were scheduled for an exam, this is the same form that the examiners are going to use, or a similar form. You can also submit some statements from your caregivers providing details of the assistance that they're providing you. And if you have them, some treatment records, some home health records, or occupational therapy notes too.
These cases, I think it's fair to say, are often quite complex, right?
Yes.
And so veterans should not assume that just because the benefit is warranted, VA will independently recognize that it's warranted and then grant it whenever it appears in their file, or the evidence supporting such should appear in their file. Although VA does have an independent requirement to, if the evidence shows in a veteran's file that a certain level of SMC should be granted, grant the benefit, they don't often do so, or they don't always do so. And so it's really incumbent upon the veteran or the veteran's accredited representative to scour the file, make sure they're looking at every independent basis for awarding SMC and for raising the issue and arguing the issue with supporting evidence whenever it's applicable in their case. If you have any questions about SMC, please feel free to reach out to an accredited representative who is well-versed in SMC, all levels of SMC. Be sure to ask whether the representative is well-versed in SMC, and make sure that they are looking through your file, raising it when necessary, and arguing it to get the benefit granted for you.